Parliamentary Updates.
The Commonwealth Youth Parliament was held from November 21st to 23rd in Trinidad and Tobago. Under the overarching theme, Youth Involvement in Parliamentary Democracy, the delegates gathered at the Parliamentary Complex in Port of Spain to learn and practice parliamentary procedure, participate in a mock debate on the Remote Workplace Bill 2022, and make lifelong comrades. After the private meet-and-greet session, the formal opening saw addresses by Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honourable Bridget Anisette George, Secretary-General of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, Stephen Twigg, and Acting President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo.
This is the first time that we are location hosts for the Commonwealth Youth Parliament, the CYP. This is the first in-person CYP since the COVID-19 pandemic seized the world. This is the first visit of the Secretary-General of the CPA, Stephen Twigg, to our beautiful Twin Island Republic. Welcome, Stephen Twigg. Our Parliament is one of the member branches of the CPA, which is a voluntary global association of 56 countries working together in accordance with shared values on themes such as democracy, human rights, sustainable development, international peace and security, small states, gender equality, and most pertinent to our undertaking over the next 3 days, youth.
The experienced presiding officer had some advice for participants. Madam Speaker highlighted the importance of youth voices on all levels of decision-making.
Youth must have a seat at the table as equal partners to realize revolutionary change, even though there are no sustainable development goals devoted explicitly to youth. Only SDG 4, young men and women from the Commonwealth should have a say on labor standards and practices, and how remote work and alternative working patterns will have an impact on the macro and micro levels of our societies.
The Secretary-General in his remarks told the delegates he enjoys working with young people.
I was previously a Member of Parliament in the United Kingdom House of Commons. I was first elected aged 30, so relatively young. I wouldn't have quite been young enough to be a CYP participant by then, but relatively young. And before that, I was a local authority councillor in my 20s and president of the National Union of Students of the United Kingdom. So youth engagement, youth voice, youth representation has always been something very, very close to my heart. So I was delighted when I started at the CPA to discover that the organisation has this focus on youth engagement, within which the Commonwealth Youth Parliament is in many ways our flagship to ensure that young people's voices are heard.
He explained the workings of the Commonwealth and the major points of focus for the organisation. He assured the strong future of the Commonwealth of Nations.
We have around 180 branches across the Commonwealth, the national parliaments, but also, as the Speaker said, subnational parliaments. We arrange them in 9 regions, and we additionally have, very importantly, 3 networks, 2 of them long-standing and 1 of them much younger. We have our Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians network to provide a voice for women members of Parliament. We know that in the vast majority of our jurisdictions, women remain seriously underrepresented in our parliaments, and we are committed to achieving gender parity in parliaments as well as within the CPA itself. We have our small branches network, and many of you are from our small branches. We define that now as those where the population is under 1 million. In many ways, the Small Branches Network has led the way in some of CPA's work on climate change, on the environment, and on biodiversity, because of the presence within that network of small island developing states. And then we have our Commonwealth Parliamentarians with Disabilities Network, a much newer network designed to challenge the exclusion of persons with disabilities from politics and to give a voice to parliamentarians with disabilities within our organisation. I was asked about the future of the Commonwealth and the role of the Commonwealth going forward. And the question was, I think, very correctly located in the context of some of the controversy about the history of the Commonwealth, the colonial legacy, the impact of slavery. And I think an opportunity to have an open, honest debate about the problematic history of the Commonwealth only serves to strengthen our organisation going forward. I know that Barbados are here, and Barbados's decision to become a republic prompted a lot of discussion around the future of the Commonwealth. But I pointed out when people said those things to me that actually the majority of members of the Commonwealth are republics. It is no threat to the Commonwealth for some of the Commonwealth members to decide to have a different head of state to the head of state of the United Kingdom, who's also the head of the Commonwealth. And with the passing of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II and the coming to the throne of King Charles, there is an opportunity, I think, particularly for young people within the Commonwealth to talk about what the Commonwealth means to you, what the Commonwealth means, yes, in terms of its history and the legacy, but the Commonwealth today, and perhaps most importantly, the Commonwealth of the future.
Her Excellency reminded us of the nobility of the profession of a politician.
More than 2,000 years ago, Aristotle said that the two noblest professions are teaching and politics. It is something to be regretted that while teaching appears to have maintained much of its esteem, parliamentary politics have not always done as well. If only for this reason, this 11th Commonwealth Youth Parliament could not be happening at a better time. It could not be happening at a more opportune juncture in parliamentary history. Today, perhaps more than at any other time, the Commonwealth and the world need to be reminded of the fundamental tenets of the parliamentary democratic process that once inspired Aristotle to muse so approvingly about politics. There needs to be a re-education about the essential nobility that lies at the heart of parliamentary participation. Who better to lead us to a return to this Aristotelian triumph than 56 young people from across the Commonwealth, aged 18 to 29.
With more than 60% of the 2.4 billion citizens of the Commonwealth under 30 years of age, Her Excellency advised that young people could no longer be pushed aside and silenced.
We can no more gainsay the critical importance of young people as change agents in our society than we can the reality of climate change. And just as they have taken upon their backs the work of being change agents in the case of the climate change, so too do young people now take upon their backs the work through this 11th Commonwealth Youth Parliament of helping to lead their societies in the direction of a keener and kinder appreciation of the work of Parliament and of parliamentarians.
The delegates also had the opportunity to attend 2 panel discussions which were held during the week of activities. One of the topics was the role of the media. Trinidad and Tobago MP Saddam Hussein gave his experience in interacting with the media.
You see cameras and you see red lights, and those things record every single thing you say. And every single thing you say can be used to either support you or it can be used against you. So it's always very important to prepare before a media conference to ensure that what your position is stated clearly, because the media, they have their role in the entire industry. The media profits are to sell news. And the media sometimes may like a politician, sometimes they may not like a politician, but you have to give them what your story is in the simplest format. Because there may be things that you can give that might be very technical, they may misunderstand what you say, and then an entire story is written or carried on a live broadcast, and it's not actually what you said, or it's not actually what the party position is. And then when you go to Parliament, the other side of the aisle uses that against you to say that your arguments are inconsistent.
He stressed that accountability is important.
When they ask questions, the media is very probing, especially in Trinidad and Tobago, I can tell you. Very, very probing, because they want you to answer. Never get annoyed at the media, because that's their job. Their job is to ask questions. Your job as a politician, as a parliamentarian, as a minister, is to be accountable to the public. And the media is the channel in which that accountability can be channeled from what your party or your government or the opposition does. So don't get annoyed at the media. Ensure that you always be respectful to the media. Sometimes you may not be prepared to answer a question. Never answer a question that you don't have the answer to. Nothing is wrong with saying that I can provide you with the answer at a later date.
And MP in the House of Assembly in the British Virgin Islands, the Honourable Shari De Castro, who is also the Minister of Education, Youth and Sport, gave an example she faced after Hurricanes Irma and Maria of 2017.
Our schools were destroyed. So our main high school on Tortola, which houses just about 1,700 students, was decimated. And we've been on shift systems, half-day systems, for about 5 years. So we've currently, we are about to, as I get back, open our new high school. We built 4 new buildings, and we're about to open it. So there's been some delays. And because there wasn't the correct level of communication with the media, we had previously given some opening dates, and we didn't do the best job at keeping the media in tune with the potential delays, given that we would have had issues with the pandemic and, of course, with shipping issues. And so our windows, our doors, we didn't get them for weeks upon weeks. There were issues with delay, but we never told persons. And so when the day that we had previously given had come, the media took the opportunity to truly, in our Caribbean dialect, lambaste us.
Minister De Castro had some solid advice for the budding politicians.
I believe holistically, you know, in terms of interacting with the media, as stated, you have to be very clear, you have to be very precise, keep your answers very concise and solid. But most importantly, you have to believe in what you're saying. The media can sense weakness in terms of thought process, in terms of vision. And so oftentimes, I believe it's very important, especially in a ministerial role, to be very involved in the process. So as the mouthpiece or the person that really champions a program, a policy, a legislation, you can't just leave it to your staff to really just draft it and build it up and bring it to that point. You have to engross yourself in the process so that when you speak from a place of intelligence and a place of knowledge that effectively is able to carry across the agenda that you have.
Members of the media fraternity in Trinidad and Tobago were also part of one of the panels in the form of Dr. Sheila Rampersad and Joel Brown.
And parliamentarians have noticed, because that is our rhythm, and that's the rhythm of a news day and a journalist day and a day in journalism, parliamentarians understand that. And they understand it because their instincts are so honed, right? They are political people, and they have finely tuned instincts for the most part. So they seize upon that. So you will have in your day's session of Parliament, I'm sure in the countries where you come from, you probably have noticed the same thing, and if not, when you go back, look and you will notice it, that you have some of your strongest speakers between those hours. You would have them like from about after the lunch break towards the tea break. Later than that, you're not getting to the next day's paper because the paper is closing off, so you'll get into the paper 2 days hence. Later than that, you're not getting into the 7 p.m. newscast. You'll probably get into the other one following day. But if you take that 12 to 4 spell, the likelihood is that you will be covered, and that what you say and what your contribution is will be reflected in the news of the night, the news of the 4 o'clock in the afternoon radio, and the news in the newspapers of the next day.
Dr. Rampersad also spoke of the changing times of the world.
I want to suggest to you that the freedom to express yourself that you are doing while you are visiting here that I am doing in talking to you now. The freedom to express yourself. We say freely, we know it's not entirely freely, but we know what the constraints are, but reasonably freely. I want to suggest that that is one of the anchors, that is one of the pillars that you can hold on to in a moment of change. And as a new thing emerges, democracy in your lifetime will not be what it is today as we sit here. In your own lifetime, that system will evolve. It may be a hybrid system. Some people are talking about an inclusive capitalism. And in the process of shaping whatever is new, which will be your task, your shoulders will be to that wheel, to shape something new and something evolved and something better. I want to suggest and offer you that your ability to express yourself and allowing others to express themselves and finding an institutional base where that can be supported and protected is a critical pillar that you can hold on to in this anxiety-inducing moment, in this moment where the sands are shifting, and in this moment where the ground under our feet appears to be more liquid than solid.
Joel Brown focused on the social media life of a politician.
But with social media, you could have a parliamentarian make one statement. It could be a misspeak, it could be a verbal typo, and it goes viral. And sometimes that is one of the things now that people who are interested in politics, and certainly if you want to be a parliamentary representative, that could be a deterrent for some people. Some people, of course, in your generation, I would imagine social media is like breathing. But there are these other synergies or these parallels that do affect political life and do affect parliamentary life, affect the way how people may perceive Parliament.
He also explained how reporting on and perception of parliamentarians have changed over the years.
What I noticed a big change, when I used to cover Parliament in the newspapers, where before the Parliament channel, you would have found a certain tone that may not always have been reflected in the way it is now, because every member of Parliament who speaks during a parliamentary sitting, during a joint select committee, is aware that they're on camera. And of course, much of what we know about politicians is really via what we see, what they do on camera. A large amount of their work probably is behind the scenes that we don't know about, meeting with constituents, things like that. So sometimes how politicians are judged, how ministers are judged by their performance, or MPs or senators, would be via reporting by the media or via contributions in Parliament. And I think for you now, in terms of those who are coming up now, with all of that combined resources of information and the ability also to kind of tell your own story or your own version of it, I think anybody who is looking at politics now and looking at getting into any form of representation in any parliament now, certainly maybe a little more, would have more sense of power over their narrative, but that could also shift very quickly.
After holding their respective caucus meetings, the members met in the chamber to debate the Remote Work Bill 2022, which sought to provide for the establishment of remote workplaces and a 4-day work week for employees and related matters for the fictional country of Kairi and Shakonia. The Deputy Minister of Public Administration, Amaris Skeet of Trinidad and Tobago, moved the second reading of the bill.
Current global challenges dictate that the government adopt ambitious and feasible national policies that aim to meet the needs arising from these challenges. It is legislation that has the potential of legitimizing new labor policies by promoting the welfare of all employees in Kairi and Shakonia. We have seen that the ferry system that employees who live on smaller islands use to commute is currently overburdened, leading to availability challenges to visitors when sailing amongst the islands. Madam Speaker, this bill will also prevent the pockets of the employees from being overburdened with transportation fees. leaving them with enough funds to provide a household and food for their families.
Minister Skeet went on to outline how the country will benefit financially.
This act will further stimulate economic growth without neglecting inclusivity and social welfare as outlined by provisions given in Clause 9, where the employer shall not refuse the application for remote work if the employee is pregnant, if the employee is disabled, has a health condition, or responsible for a child under the age of 5 years old, or is tasked with the care for a dependent with a disability. Madam Speaker, citizens of Kairi and Shekonia, for a country so heavily dependent on tourism, it is appropriate and proactive to diversify our economy from being one solely dependent on tourism to a multifaceted economy through innovation to safeguard it against unforeseen economic downturns as those which were caused by the COVID-19 pandemic.
The first responder was the Shadow Minister of Public Administration, Joe Peter Luger, from Gibraltar.
The problem, Madam Speaker, is that this bill will not accomplish any of these items. As drafted, this bill is dead in the water. The opposition will, as a party, will nevertheless support a bill that allows for remote working, subject to amendments. Madam Speaker, before outlining the ways in which we propose to do this, I just want to make clear that what the Honourable Minister for Public Administration has said today is twofold. Firstly, she has said that this government does not care for small businesses and that it is willing to sacrifice employers and employees alike, our own citizens and countrymen and women, at the altar of shallow political motives. The Minister has termed this doctrine flexible arrangements, but it will do nothing but kill the small businesses, their innovation and their enterprise in our community. The Minister states that the COVID pandemic affected us badly. Of course it did. It affected this entire world. But this policy would keep us living in the pandemic when it is time for us to move beyond it. Secondly, Madam Speaker, it is clear that this government could not care less for the rural communities of our country. These are the poorest, literally the most disconnected. This bill is nothing more than a sad summary of just how isolated the government and its members are from the people most in need in our community. But we on this side of the House work for all people of these islands. She talks about those people in need. How about the people in need in all of the corners of our island, not just on the two most populated upon which the government depends for its votes?
The Minister of Digital Transformation boasted that the national economy did not collapse.
That was prevented, Madam Speaker, all because our government, once again with smart minds, understand the impact of a pandemic, and we work effortlessly to ensure that our citizens are taken care of. Additionally, Madam Speaker, we would have recognized that there is a gap that we must zoom into to ensure all citizens can benefit from this smart ICT initiative, which includes accessibility and low bandwidth connections. It is important, Madam Speaker, that we understand our country's geographical landscape, which we have not placed a blind eye to. But as a government working effortlessly, our aim is to ensure that we develop a national ICT strategy that will be overlooked by a specialized committee within the Ministry of Digital Transformation to ensure there is a holistic and comprehensive approach to cybersecurity and gap analysis, which effectively protects information while it also provides a universal approach in the processing and sharing of information that contributes to an increase in efficiency, improved collaboration, and minimizes duplication and errors.
The Deputy Shadow Minister for Digital Transformation responded.
This is not a disagreement with the policy itself, but the bill. It is not that we on this side of the House disagree that a 4-day working week and working from home are bad policies, but the bill itself is bad. It lacks deep thought and consideration for all members of society. Most clearly, the poorer in society and the outer islands. We represent on this side of the House all 5 islands, not just the 2 centre ones. I bring to you today 2 fundamental issues with this bill. The first, it does not consider the economic impact of the sectors on the non-central islands. And 2, the considerations of the bill on inequality. First, the minister yesterday claimed that the bill would take our economy forward. It will result in economic growth. But such a claim has no consideration of the outer islands. The bill would wreck their economy, and the outer islands would be damaged by this policy. 2 of our key islands are focused on foreign investment for their flourishing tourism sector. The third focuses on medical tourism. In order to remain competitive in a global market, it's not possible that all sectors can be focused under this bill. This bill has a wide berth under all sectors, and it's not capable. This bill is not capable of applying to all of these sectors. It makes investing in our nation more costly. Investors look to maximize profit, and this bill has made the price of investment into Karai and Chiconia more expensive. It is right that the new emerging workers in IT and consumer services should be able to work from home, to have a 4-day working week. But this bill has forgotten the whole population. It has forgotten the outer islands. They will not see economic growth, but instead they will see economic ruin. Instead, the bill must be sector-specific in order to ensure we retain competitiveness, investment and economic growth for all of the islands.
Meanwhile, the Attorney General was in a fighting mood.
The Industrial Relations Commission, which would be established by Section 5 of the Remote Working Bill, is a sensible, clear-cut model for mediating and remedying concerns arising under the bill. It recognises and legislates for the need for an intersectional, holistic expertise base, including experience in relevant areas like law and social welfare. The opposition, while vocal, has failed to provide legitimate reasons why this commission is inherently a bad idea to enforce the bill's purposes of promoting welfare and creating enabling and inclusive workplace environments. If the opposition is so concerned with the rule of law, perhaps they would consider actually performing their obligations as part of the legislature by fully reading bills before making incorrect, impassioned arguments. The opposition in particular voiced a concern that the legitimacy of the Section 5, subsection 3 appointment process would be undermined by the minister only choosing to appoint their friends. Firstly, if the opposition has concerns about the minister's integrity, they should raise this formally, as this is something the government takes seriously. Secondly, this shows that they are ignoring the criteria explicitly laid out in Section 5, subsection 3, where the President, when appointing the Commission, must consider a detailed list of relevant skill sets and qualifications. The opposition's lacking comprehension of parliamentary procedure is probably why they're on that side of the House. To help with the opposition's oversight, those criteria are that the commissioners and chairmen must be qualified by experience in law, industrial relations issues, business management, gender affairs, social welfare, or human rights. This is a comprehensive list. However, in the spirit of engaging with the opposition's critique, we will propose an amendment to Section 5, subsection 4, circulated tomorrow, where the chairman and commissioners appointed by the President will be done so with consultation with the minister.
And the Shadow Attorney General was equally passionate.
Now, Madam Speaker, let's start with the jurisdiction. Now, Madam Speaker, when I read Clause 5, right, which I believe my colleague yesterday would have mentioned, reads as if it was written by a law student, and I'm inclined to agree with him, because there are no clear provisions to actually legitimize and give credibility to this Industrial Relations Commission. Madam Speaker, in effect, what the government is doing is setting up a commission that has the powers of a court, a quasi-judicial tribunal, Madam Speaker. Yet nowhere in this bill can I find a clause that expressly transfers powers of the court onto the Industrial Relations Commission. And Madam Speaker, that puts us in the position of towing the line of the separation of powers and encroaching on the judiciary's function. And we in the opposition will not stand for it, Madam Speaker. Now, Madam Speaker, the honourable member would have also spoken. Madam Speaker, let me just firstly elucidate how this is in fact a court. One, the Commission has jurisdiction to hear and determine appeals. That's a function of the judiciary. Two, require persons to attend. It's your summons before it for the purpose of giving evidence and producing documents to make such declarations, orders, and awards of compensation as it thinks fit. Well, if that's not a court to the government, I have to ask the government, why are they on that side?
Government member Kawazi of Malaysia focused his contribution on education.
Let me start with one quote says, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." The development of education world is the same important as the welfare of teachers and also the continuity of the education's quality of among these students. The remote work bill that was presented by the minister in this house yesterday was seen to have a high appeal, especially for teachers. Referring to section 14.1 of the bill, an employee may apply to work for 4 days of the week. It seems to open a good offer to the teachers. The current situation's challenges definitely affecting the workload of teachers, which I have experienced it before as an educator. Therefore, I see this as one of the perks offered by this government to all of the teachers, as well as for the teachers' recruitment and retention in the organization, which sadly never be done by the previous government. And this is why the people of this country choose and stand with new political movement. Madam Speaker, contradicts to what the opposition's member has mentioned earlier this morning and mislead this House by saying that there is a fall of our education quality during the pandemic. Let me remind you, my dear opposition members, the Kerry and Shoshone adult literacy percentage in this year, 2022, greatly reaches 99.5%.
While opposition member Harris cautioned the government.
I am a part of the Republic of Kyrie and Chaconia. So is everybody sat here today. I find it truly sad and defeating that our current government does not care about the people within agriculture. We are all important members of our society, and my esteemed colleagues have already touched on so many points that help to provide the information needed to make informed decisions. Our small archipelago is home to 1 million people. That is extraordinary. I feel as though the government forgets that we're all people and not statistics. We face hard times ahead. Care and consideration is profoundly needed. Robert Bob Cockwell is a coconut farmer in central Poinsettia. His family have worked themselves to the bone. It is increasingly saddening that his painstaking work is being neglected. In Clause 6, an employee may apply to his employer for a variation of his terms and conditions of employment in relation to A, where he is required to work. Madam Speaker, how do you think Bob's workers are going to farm for coconuts from their homes? A 4-day work week would only suit some and not all. This is not just about Bob, it's about all of our community. If Bob were to enforce a 4-day work week, he would need more staff to obtain a continuous rota. Agriculture is not a 9-to-5 job, and I repeat, it is not a 9-to-5 job.
On day 3 of debate, the Deputy Minister of Digital Transformation weighed in.
If the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us anything, it has taught us that the physical distance should not hinder us from continuing to walk. If that had been the case, then our global economies would have shut down during this pandemic, Madam Speaker. But they didn't. In fact, they became more productive in some instances. Madam Speaker, this was the case in Kyrie and Shakonia as well, where businesses were forced to adapt and remote hybrid work proved to give our economy the breathing space they desperately needed to pull through in the hardest of times. Given that remote work worked during the pandemic, why shouldn't it work in normal times? Critics of this bill state that the internet penetration in rural areas and the smaller islands is considerably low. And this is something that we acknowledge, Madam Speaker, which is why this government has started to invest in internet infrastructure as well as remote working hubs with fast, stable, and secure internet connection in rural areas and the smaller islands. And also, we are recommending that this House also engages in legislation which guarantees internet access as a human right, a concept that is being pushed on the United Nations level and in the European Union, Madam Speaker, amongst other things, and would very much help us in guaranteeing connectivity for all, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we must also be honest in stating that remote work and the implementation of a 4-day work week will allow our transport infrastructure to breathe and reduce emissions. When people don't have to commute, emission will subsequently decrease, as happened during the pandemic. And this is something that will also aid us in reducing our carbon footprint. So will the prevalence of a 4-day working week, given that workers will commute 20% less every week? On the other hand, we must also be rational and practical, Madam Speaker, when granting remote work. So, for example, you can't have manual laborers applying to work remotely when the nature of the job makes it impossible for them to work remotely, Madam Speaker. In such cases, it is more than evident that the Industrial Relations Commission will reject the appeal, Madam Speaker.
Opposition member Wangombe said the bill did not consider all stakeholders.
First, Madam Speaker, the bill has mainly focused on promoting the welfare of employees at the expense of the employers. It has placed so much emphasis on the rights of the employees as opposed to the employer. Therefore, the bill should ensure that there is a win-win situation for both the employer and the employee when it comes to working from home. Clause 8, subsection 1E of the bill states that the remote workplace agreement shall provide a condition for reimbursement to the employee for telecommunication expenses incurred. This might end up being very expensive for businesses in Kyrie and Chakonia, especially for SMEs, small medium-term enterprises. The bill should therefore have a clause that standardizes the tools that any employer shall be required to offer or give employee to enable working from home. The bill also applies to employees in the civil service. So if you're asking employees to purchase their own electronic devices and then they are later reimbursed, how will we ensure the principle of procurement are achieved, especially when it comes to offering value for money for the citizens of Kyrie and Chakonia? How will we ensure there's transparency in the process of reimbursing back the money incurred? Secondly, Madam Speaker, I believe a code of conduct should be established in the bill that the employer will use when considering the request for remote working. This will provide a guidance to both the employer and the employee on their obligation regarding working from home. The code of conduct should be included in the remote workplace agreement, and both the employee and the employer shall sign before commencement of work. This will streamline the process of working from home and help ensure compliance. This should be included in Clause 5, subsection 2E as one of the mandates for Industrial Relations Commission.
At the conclusion of the debate, the House went into committee stage, where amendments were made. After the amended bill was reported to the House, a division of votes was taken, the results of which were announced by the Speaker.
Honourable members, the result of the division is 52 members voted for, 0 members voted against, and 0 members abstained. The bill has been passed.
After the adjournment, delegates also had to face the press, as real parliamentarians would. One question asked about guarantees of not forgetting the public interest when they are elected.
Hi, good morning. I think that's a lovely question because I'll add to what the Prime Minister was saying earlier as far as passion is concerned. I think we need to add to passion a sense of conviction. And conviction, I think the best, at least sometimes conviction comes from proximity to the right kinds of issues that are affecting our community. And I think what happens is that when leaders, as you say, do assimilate into these roles that gives them a different lifestyle than they're accustomed to or that they grew up having, it takes them away sometimes from the communities that they're meant to be serving and the people that they're meant to be serving. And I think if they can find ways to stay ingrained in grassroots programs, with people in their community finding out their stories and keeping near to the issues that affect people, I think it keeps them grounded and it keeps them connected to the things that actually matter, so that when they are speaking, when they are representing the communities and the people that they're serving, they're speaking from a place of conviction and a place of knowing within themselves that this is what is actually going on. And I think that is what keeps the fire lit inside a person.
I would have to say it would definitely be that passion and drive, that love for my country, especially using the Turks and Caicos Islands. I went away to school, and for 3 years, everybody was telling me, why are you coming back? There's nothing there for you. And I had to always tell them, it has to be my love for my country. And to say that I want to go into politics with that mindset that, oh, 5 years down the line, I'll be driving a Benz and I wouldn't be really caring for the people who elected me, is to say that, why did I go into politics? Because if you don't have that passion, that drive for your job, it then becomes work. And when it becomes work, then you know you didn't go into this for the right reasons.
For me, in terms of the guarantee that the same mindset that some of the current politicians have, we'd not share in the future, I'm thinking that it's integrity. And I think that integrity is one of the main tenets of anybody that's holding a public office. I am of the impression that I can reference what the opposition leader said earlier, and she said that you have to remember your why. Why is it that you would have gotten to this place? Why is it that you were interested in it in the first place? And once you can answer your why, then it will answer multiple other questions. It will give you direction as to where to go. We are youth right now, and I'm not telling you that things are going to remain the same when 20 years from now, 30 years from now, should I become a politician. And what I have to do is not play hypocrite in putting it in simple forms, because I am calling on politicians now to listen to youth. So why is it then that I would have the passion, the love for country, asking myself the why, answering that, and still not including youthful perspectives in going forward?
The Parliament channel spoke with some of the delegates about their experience.
I have had a very great experience. It is my first time doing participating in such an event. It has been eye-opening, it has been enlightening. I have learned from my colleagues from the different parts of the world, and I think it is a very nice experience. The bill, I am in the government side, and I am for the bill. Remote working and the 4-day working period is a good move. In the current world that we live in, I think we should engage in remote working, because it is with a mental illness that people are facing. I think it's an open space for everyone to engage. You don't have to go to work with the budget constraints that are ongoing. I think it's a bill that we should take into law.
I think my experience here is very fulfilling. I met a lot of friends. I think my 3 expectations, if I could share, I have 3 expectations when I came here. First is to learn on how parliamentary system actually works, and how to imply on the bill and how to debate on the bill. And I am so grateful that I get to have this opportunity to debate about this with my friends, and I can't wait to get back to my country and share to all of these future politicians, future parliamentarians on how parliamentary actually works. And then my second expectations is to learn as much as I can from my friends from all over the world, because we have different cultures, we have different problems in our country, and it's very, very, very wonderful that we get to share that, and also to just imply the culture and bring it back to our country. For the remote work bill, for me, because not just because I'm in the side of opposition, but also generally talking, if I were to be the people of the Republic and Chaconia, I feel like the bill has to be fixed. The bill has to be fixed. The policy is good, but the bill is not extensive enough, especially on the digital transformation part, to be implied for the people of Kari and Chaconia. So it has to be fixed, it has to be amended so that the people can benefit the most from the bill, especially regarding the digital transformation.
Oh, it's very great. It's a new experience for me, talking to other youth parliamentarians from across the Commonwealth. It's a new debate style. It's different from that of my home province. I've been having a lot of great new experiences. I enjoy the hospitality of the post-parliament here. So I'm enjoying myself very thoroughly. Oh, I think it's a very interesting bill and very pertinent to us now, especially after COVID and all that. So, for myself, we still do work from home as well in BC for some jobs. So it has a kind of a personal hint for myself as well. So I think it's a great idea that we can move towards or provide the option to have remote work, and even a lot of countries now are moving towards the 4-day or trying to get a 4-day. So I think it's a good start to the debate. It may not be the end goal, but we'll get there sooner or later.
The delegates were also treated to a cultural evening hosted at the Exodus Panyard in Tunapuna and a farewell dinner on the final day of their stay. Stay tuned for more parliamentary updates. For more information, visit our website at www.ttparliament.org and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram.
Parliamentary updates.